The stadium erupted in chaos as security guards were escorted out in handcuffs. On the giant screen, a viral video played showing twin sisters Jasmine and Jessica Rivers sobbing in the airport terminal. "They didn't know we owned the damn airline." Jasmine's voice echoed throughout the arena. Before we dive into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever experienced discrimination, and subscribe to join our community. Fighting for justice, ready to discover how brilliant women turn humiliation into revolution. Let's go. Jasmine and Jessica Rivers had been planning this moment for years. At 28 years old, the identical twins had just closed a major deal that pushed their cybersecurity firm RiverTech past the $50 million valuation mark. After 5 years of grinding 18-hour days, declining social invitations, and sacrificing personal relationships for their business, they were finally allowing themselves a celebration. "I still can't believe we pulled it off," Jessica said, carefully folding her designer swimsuit into her carry-on luggage. Their penthouse apartment in San Francisco offered a panoramic view of the bay, a far cry from the cramped two-bedroom in Detroit where they'd grown up. "Mom would be proud," Jasmine replied, her voice softening as she glanced at the framed photo on her nightstand. Their mother had passed away 2 years ago after a battle with cancer, never getting to see the full extent of her daughter's success. She had raised them alone after their father abandoned the family. When the twins were just 4 years old, the journey from Detroit to Silicon Valley hadn't been easy. As Black women in tech, they'd faced constant skepticism, microaggressions, and outright discrimination. Venture capitalists would address questions to their white male CFO during pitch meetings. Despite the twins being the founders and technical geniuses behind the company, they'd been mistaken for administrative assistants at industry conferences. One potential investor had even asked if they were the diversity hire when introduced as the company's founders. "Remember when that guy at TechCrunch said we must have gotten in through a special program?" Jessica laughed, but the sound was hollow. "Then his face when we won the Innovation Award." Jasmine nodded, zipping up her suitcase. "That's why. This trip matters. We've earned this, first class all the way." The decision to splurge on first-class tickets to Bermuda hadn't been made lightly. Despite their success, both sisters still carried financial habits from their frugal upbringing. But after securing the government contract that would change their company forever, they decided it was time to experience luxury travel. "I can't wait to use the VIP lounge," Jessica said, scrolling through her phone to double-check their flight details. The Coastal Airlines Platinum membership was worth every penny. They had purchased the premium airline memberships 6 months earlier, planning ahead for this moment. The exclusive status cost $5,000 annually, but promised priority boarding, access to premium lounges, and first-class upgrades. "Did you pack the matching outfits?" Jasmine asked, referencing the custom-made Ankara print jumpsuits they'd commissioned from a Nigerian designer. The vibrant blue and gold fabric was fashioned into elegant resort wear that honored their heritage while making a bold fashion statement. "Of course, day one on the beach, we're going to look fabulous," Jessica confirmed. The twins had decided to arrive at Detroit Metropolitan Airport 3 hours before their flight. Though they now lived in California, they'd returned to Detroit to visit their aunt before the vacation and decided to depart from there. The early arrival would give them ample time to enjoy the Coastal Airlines Platinum Lounge, a perk they were eager to experience. As they entered the airport, pulling their matching designer luggage, they attracted admiring glances. Both women stood 5'9" with flawless dark skin, high cheekbones, and carefully maintained dreadlocks styled in elegant updos. They wore tailored travel suits, Jessica in deep burgundy, Jasmine in forest green, paired with leather ankle boots. "Ms. Rivers, such an honor," called out a young Black woman at the information desk. "I read about you in Detroit Business Monthly. You're such an inspiration." The twins paused, greeting the woman warmly and taking a selfie with her. These moments of recognition still felt surreal. Just 5 years ago, they had been unknown computer science graduates with big dreams and empty bank accounts. "Thank you for representing us in tech," the woman said earnestly. "My daughter wants to be a programmer because of women like you." With warm hearts, They continued toward the Coastal Airlines premium check-in counter. As they approached, Jessica noticed the attendant's smile falter slightly as they drew closer. The woman's eyes flicked between them and her computer screen, a flash of confusion crossing her face. "Platinum members?" she asked, her tone carrying a hint of skepticism as she examined their membership cards. "Yes, since January," Jasmine confirmed, sliding her ID across the counter. The attendant processed their check-in, her movements stiff and professional, but the warmth was gone from her interactions. As she handed back their boarding passes for seats 1A and 1B, her eyes didn't quite meet theirs. "Enjoy your flight," she said flatly, as they walked away toward security. Jessica leaned toward her sister. "Did you feel that?" Jasmine nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe she's just having a bad day." Neither twin spoke what they were thinking, that they'd experienced this subtle shift in treatment too many times before, but they refused to let it dampen their spirits. This was their celebration, their moment of triumph. Nothing would ruin it. Little did they know that the strange look from the check-in attendant was just the first ripple of a storm about to break over their long-awaited vacation. Boarding began precisely on schedule at gate C21. The twins approached the priority lane, boarding passes and IDs in hand. The gate agent, a young man with a neat haircut and crisp uniform, checked their documents with a professional smile. "Welcome aboard, Ms. and Ms. Rivers. Enjoy your flight to Bermuda." As they stepped onto the jetway, Jessica squeezed her sister's arm in excitement. "This is really happening." At the aircraft door, flight attendant Meredith Cooper greeted them with a practiced smile. "Welcome to Coastal Airlines," she said brightly, but her expression changed subtly as she checked their boarding passes. "Oh, 1A and 1B? Let me show you to your seats." The first-class cabin gleamed with luxury, just 8 spacious seats, with ample legroom, personal entertainment systems, and plush padding covered in soft beige leather. The twins stored their carry-ons in the overhead compartments and settled into their seats at the very front of the plane. "Can I offer you a pre-departure beverage?" Meredith asked, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the gray-haired white couple seated across the aisle. "Champagne, please," Jasmine replied, trying to ignore the shift in attitude. "I'll see what we have available," Meredith responded before walking away without taking Jessica's order. Jessica raised an eyebrow at her sister. "Did she just—" "Let's give her the benefit of the doubt," Jasmine interrupted. Though her own doubts were growing, the sisters explored their surroundings, reclining their seats to test the features, examining the amenity kits filled with luxury skincare products, and reviewing the gourmet menu options. This level of luxury was new to them, despite their financial success. Growing up with a single mother who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet had instilled in them a practical approach to money. Investing and saving took priority over splurging. "I could get used to this," Jessica whispered, wrapping the soft cashmere blanket around her shoulders. Meredith returned several minutes later with 2 water bottles, no champagne in sight. "We'll serve beverages after takeoff," she said curtly, before attending to other passengers. The boarding process continued smoothly until most passengers were seated. Just as the final call announcement played over the intercom, a commotion at the front of the plane drew the twins' attention. A tall white man in an expensive suit strode onto the aircraft, speaking loudly into his Bluetooth earpiece. "Tell Johnson I'll review the merger documents during the flight." "Yes, I got the upgrade." "Of course." He ended his call and approached the first-class cabin, stopping abruptly at the twins' row. "There must be some mistake," he said, addressing Meredith, who had rushed over. "I always sit in 1A." "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitfield," Meredith replied, examining his boarding pass. "It seems these passengers were assigned these seats today." Richard Whitfield, approximately 50 years old with salt and pepper hair and an air of entitlement, looked down at the twins with undisguised annoyance. "I'm a platinum member. I always sit in 1A. We're platinum members too," Jessica explained calmly. "These are our assigned seats." Whitfield scoffed. "There's clearly been a mistake. I've been flying this route every month for years." Meredith's demeanor transformed as she addressed Whitfield, her voice warm and deferential. "Let me see what I can do for you." "Mr. Whitfield, we value your loyalty to Coastal Airlines." She turned to the twins, her expression hardening. "Ladies, would you mind moving to another row? Mr. Whitfield is one of our most valued Platinum members." Jasmine straightened in her seat. "We're Platinum members as well, and these are our assigned seats. We booked them months ago specifically." "I understand, but Mr. Whitfield has status with us," Meredith insisted, emphasizing the word status in a way that made its implication clear. Jessica noticed her sister subtly slip her phone from her pocket and place it on her lap, the camera facing upward. Jasmine had always been the more proactive one, anticipating problems before they fully materialized. "Our status is identical to his," Jessica countered, keeping her voice level. "We paid for these specific seats." Whitfield interrupted, his patience visibly thinning. "Look, I don't have time for this. I have important business calls to make during this flight. Just move." "Then to another row. I'll get the flight supervisor," Meredith said, hurrying toward the back of the plane. The twins exchanged glances, a lifetime of silent communication passing between them, round them. Other first-class passengers pretended not to notice the confrontation, though several cast curious or uncomfortable glances their way. Minutes later, Meredith returned with Bradley Thompson, a stocky man with a receding hairline and a flight supervisor pin on his lapel. He assessed the situation with a frown. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, directing the question to Whitfield rather than the twins. "These women are in my preferred seats," Whitfield explained as if discussing a minor inconvenience. Like a misplaced drink order, Bradley turned to the twins, his expression making it clear he'd already decided the outcome. "Ladies, we need you to relocate to accommodate Mr. Whitfield. He's a long-standing Platinum member." "So are we," Jasmine stated firmly. "We booked and paid for these specific seats." Bradley's condescending smile made both women bristle. "I understand you may have been upgraded." "We weren't upgraded," Jessica interrupted. "We purchased these first-class seats directly." A flicker of disbelief crossed Bradley's face. "Nevertheless, we need to make adjustments sometimes for aircraft weight distribution and balance." The transparent lie hung in the air. The twins had experienced enough discrimination to recognize the familiar patterns, the assumptions, the disbelief, the flimsy excuses. "Weight distribution," Jasmine repeated incredulously. "The plane hasn't changed weight regardless of which passengers sit in which seats." Bradley's smile tightened. "Perhaps you don't understand aviation regulations. Now, we have two available seats in economy." Economy, Jessica cut in. "We paid for first class." Whitfield sighed dramatically. "This is ridiculous. I'm going to miss my conference call." Meredith leaned toward the twins and lowered her voice. "Look, we can tell you got these tickets on some discount site. Next time, book directly through the airline if you want to ensure your seating preferences." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable, the implication that they couldn't possibly afford legitimate first-class tickets, that they must have found some loophole or special deal. "We booked directly through the Coastal Airlines website and paid full price," Jasmine stated, her voice tight with controlled anger. "We are Platinum members, just like Mr. Whitfield." "Let's be reasonable," Bradley said, his patience visibly wearing thin. "We need you to move now or we'll delay departure." "We will not move," Jessica said firmly. "You have two options: honor our tickets for the seats we paid for, or we leave this plane and you can explain to your superiors why you removed to Platinum members from their rightfully purchased seats." Bradley's expression darkened. "If that's your attitude, perhaps you should choose the second option. Security to gate C21. Security to gate C21. Bradley Thompson's voice crackled over the radio, his eyes never leaving the twins. "We have unruly passengers refusing to comply with crew instructions." "Unruly," Jessica echoed in disbelief. "We're sitting in our assigned seats, round them." The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had shifted from awkward discomfort to tense spectacle. Several passengers had their phones out, recording the escalating situation. Others studiously looked away, suddenly fascinated by their in-flight magazines or the view outside the small oval windows. "You're making a serious mistake," Jasmine warned, her phone still recording in her lap. Bradley leaned in, his voice low but harsh. The mistake was thinking you belonged in these seats. The words hung in the air like poison, their implication unmistakable. Jessica flinched as if physically struck. Jasmine's hand found her sister's, squeezing tightly. "Did everyone hear what he just said?" Jasmine asked loudly, looking around the cabin. A few passengers nodded uncomfortably, others averted their eyes. Within minutes, 2 uniformed security officers appeared at the cabin entrance. One was a middle-aged white man with a military-style haircut. The other was a younger black man who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "These 2 need to be removed," Bradley stated, pointing at the twins. "They're refusing crew instructions and disrupting pre-flight procedures. Ma'am, I need you to gather your belongings and come with us," the older officer instructed. "We've done nothing wrong," Jessica protested. "We're sitting in our assigned seats that we paid for." "That's not my concern," the officer replied flatly. "If the flight crew says you need to leave, you need to leave." Jasmine stood slowly, dignity in every movement. "We'll leave, but everyone here is witnessing discrimination. We will be pursuing this legally." As Jessica rose to follow her sister, Richard Whitfield smirked from across the aisle. "Some people just don't understand how things work," he remarked to no one in particular. The twins moved toward the exit, but as they reached the end of the first-class cabin, Bradley stepped in front of them. "Your carry-ons," he reminded them with false politeness. "We can get them ourselves," Jessica said, turning back toward their seats. "That won't be necessary," Meredith interjected, already pulling their bags from the overhead compartment with none of the care typically afforded to passengers' belongings. Jessica's designer bag hit the floor with a thud, the sound of breaking glass unmistakable. "My perfume," she gasped, lunging forward to retrieve it. The older security officer grabbed her arm roughly. "Don't make this difficult. Take your hands off me," Jessica demanded, trying to pull away. In the struggle that followed, Jessica's expensive watch, a gift from their first major investor, caught on the officer's uniform button and snapped, falling to the floor where it was immediately stepped on. "You broke my watch," Jessica cried out. "You were resisting," the officer stated coldly. Jasmine moved to help her sister, but was blocked by Bradley. "Don't make this worse for yourselves," he warned. The younger black security officer, whose name read Williams, looked increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. As Meredith roughly handed him the twins' bags, he took them carefully and gave the women an almost imperceptible nod of sympathy. The procession through the main cabin was humiliating. Every eye was on them as they were escorted like criminals past rows of staring passengers. Whispers followed in their wake. What did they do? Were they drunk or something? First-class drama. By the time they reached the jetway, Jessica was fighting back tears of anger and humiliation. Jasmine maintained her composure, her mind already cataloging every detail of the incident for the legal battle she knew would follow. In the terminal, away from the aircraft, Officer Williams spoke quietly to his partner. "I've got this from here, Rankin. You can go back to the checkpoint." Once alone with the twins, Williams's demeanor changed. "I'm sorry about what happened in there," he said, his voice low. "That wasn't right." "No, it wasn't," Jasmine agreed, finally stopping her recording and slipping her phone into her pocket. "Look, I can't say much, but I've seen this before with Thompson and Cooper. You're not the first," Williams confided, glancing around to ensure no one was within earshot. "My name's Darnell Williams. Here's my card with my personal number. If you need a witness to how you were treated, call me." Jessica, still fighting tears, looked up in surprise. "You do that? What happened in there wasn't just bad customer service. It was discrimination, plain and simple," Darnell replied firmly. As Darnell walked away, Jessica finally broke down. The tears she'd been holding back flowed freely as she sank onto a nearby bench. Jasmine sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, her own eyes damp. "All those people watching us get thrown off like criminals," Jessica sobbed. "After everything we've accomplished, we still get treated like we don't belong." The terminal bustled around them, travelers rushing past with barely a glance at the 2 weeping women. The casual indifference was almost as painful as the active discrimination they just experienced. It's just like when we were kids, Jessica continued, memories flooding back. Remember when Mrs. Atkins accused us of cheating because our science project was too advanced for girls like us? Jasmine nodded, the old injustice still stinging years later. Or when we went to that tech conference in Austin, and they kept asking us to fetch coffee because they assumed we were the caterers for all their success, all their achievements. Moments like these could instantly transport them back to that feeling of powerlessness of being judged not by their character or accomplishments, but by their skin color. As the initial shock began to subside, Jasmine's natural strategic thinking reasserted itself. "We need to call Franklin," she said, referring to Franklin Moore, their corporate attorney. Jessica nodded, wiping her tears. "This isn't over. They picked the wrong women to mess with today." Jasmine pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. As she did, she realized something that made her pause, a slow smile spreading across her face despite the circumstances. "Jess," she said quietly, "remember that investment portfolio diversification Victoria recommended last year during the pandemic?" Jessica looked confused for a moment, then her eyes widened as realization dawned. "Coastal Airlines, we bought shares during the bailout." Jasmine nodded slowly. 15% ownership. "We're not just passengers they discriminated against. We're owners," Jessica finished, her despair beginning to transform into determination. "They didn't just kick two black women off their flight," Jasmine said, her voice hardening with resolve. "They kicked out the third largest shareholders of the entire airline." Do you think Jasmine and Jessica were justified in their anger? Comment number 1 if you believe they should have given up their seats to avoid conflict. Or number 2 if you think they were right to stand their ground. Like this video if you've ever witnessed discrimination in supposedly premium spaces. Have you ever been in a situation where someone assumed you didn't belong? Subscribe to our channel for more stories about standing up against injustice. Now, what do you think the twins will do with their shareholder power? Let's find out. The moment Jessica and Jasmine Rivers stepped into the private VIP lounge of Detroit Metropolitan Airport, access granted through their other airline memberships, the dynamic between them shifted. The tears and shock gave way to calculated planning. These weren't just victims of discrimination. They were strategic business leaders who had built a tech empire from nothing. "Victoria needs to know about this immediately," Jasmine said, already dialing their investment manager, Victoria. Chen had been with them since their first major funding round 3 years ago. The Harvard-educated financial wizard had helped the twins transform their tech success into a diversified investment portfolio that included real estate, stocks, and strategic company investments. "The Coastal Airlines investment was your idea," Jessica reminded her sister as they waited for Victoria to answer. "I wanted to go with renewable energy." Jasmine nodded. The pandemic was tanking airline stocks. It was the perfect time to buy. Their decision to invest in Coastal Airlines hadn't been merely opportunistic. After their cybersecurity firm hit its first 8-figure valuation, the twins had made a conscious decision to invest in industries where diversity was lacking. Transportation, especially commercial aviation, was notoriously homogeneous in its leadership. "Rivers Tech Innovation speaking," Victoria answered crisply. "Victoria, it's Jasmine and Jessica. We have a situation with Coastal Airlines." As Jasmine explained what had happened, Victoria's outrage became palpable even through the phone. "They did what? Do they have any idea who you are?" "That's just it," Jessica interjected. "We were traveling incognito. We wanted to experience the service as regular customers, not as investors." This had been their approach with several of their investments, experiencing the product or service as ordinary consumers to assess the customer experience authentically. Today, that decision had revealed an ugly truth about Coastal Airlines culture. "The man they tried to give our seats to, Richard Whitfield." "Victoria, can you run a check on him?" Jasmine asked. "Already on it," Victoria replied, the sound of rapid typing audible in the background. "Give me a few minutes. I'll call you right back." While waiting for Victoria's return call, the twins began reviewing the video Jasmine had recorded. The footage was damning, clear evidence of discriminatory treatment. From Meredith's changing demeanor to Bradley's explicit statement implying they didn't belong. In first class, this is gold for a lawsuit, Jessica observed, her business mind already calculating potential damages. It's more than that, Jasmine replied. It's evidence of a systemic issue. I bet Thompson and Cooper have done this before. Victoria's call back came faster than expected. You're not going to believe this, she said without preamble. Richard Whitfield is not some random executive. He's a vice president at Aerostar International. The competing airline, Jessica asked, surprised. Exactly. He's in their corporate strategy division. I'd bet good money he was flying coastal. To gather competitive intelligence, the twins exchanged meaningful glances. This added a whole new dimension to the incident. We need a multi-pronged approach. Jasmine decided, legal, corporate, and public relations. I'm already contacting Franklin, Victoria assured them, referring to their attorney. And I've texted Olivia to meet you at the airport. She should be there within the hour. Olivia Jackson was their PR specialist, a former crisis management consultant for Fortune 500 companies who now worked exclusively for Rivertech. Her expertise would be crucial in navigating the public aspects of this incident. What's our shareholder position exactly? Jessica asked, trying to recall the details of their investment. 15% ownership, making you the third largest. Shareholders behind Wellington Capital at 22%, and the Peterson family at 18%, Victoria confirmed. You have significant influence, especially if you align with Wellington, who've been pushing for more progressive policies anyway. The twins spent the next 45 minutes outlining their strategy, weighing options from immediate public statements to behind the scenes, corporate maneuvers. By the time Olivia arrived, they had formulated the beginnings of a plan. Olivia Jackson strode into the lounge with purpose, her tailored suit and confident demeanor drawing eyes from other travelers. At 35, she had already handled PR crises for some of the biggest names in tech and entertainment. I saw the video, she said without preamble, sitting down across from the twins. It's explosive. The question is, do we release it now or hold it as leverage? Both approaches have merit, Jasmine acknowledged. Going public immediately creates pressure, but working behind the scenes gives us time to build a stronger case. Why not both? Jessica suggested. We pursue legal and corporate action privately, while strategically leaking just enough to social media to create public awareness. Olivia nodded approvingly. A two-pronged approach could work. We identify key social media influencers in both travel and racial justice spaces, share the video with them exclusively, and let it spread organically while we prepare more comprehensive action. Meanwhile, we gather more evidence, Jasmine added. I bet Thompson and Cooper have histories of similar incidents. If we can find other victims, we build a pattern of discrimination case. Rather than a single incident, Jessica finished her sister's thought, as they often did. Exactly, Olivia confirmed. And with your shareholder position, you have access to internal data most discrimination plaintiffs never get to see. The discussion continued as they refined their strategy, considering every angle and potential. Response from coastal airlines. The anger and humiliation they'd felt on the plane had transformed into something more powerful. Strategic determination. We didn't board that plane as investors looking to assess the company, Jasmine reflected. But that's exactly what ended up happening, and coastal airlines failed the test spectacularly. They thought they were putting to uppity black women in their place, Jessica said, her voice hardening. Instead, they just put their entire corporate culture under the microscope. By the time they left the airport, their Bermuda vacation postponed, but not forgotten, the twins had a comprehensive plan in place. This incident wouldn't be buried or settled quietly with NDA letters and token compensation. It would become a catalyst for fundamental change. Should we let them know who we are? Jessica wondered as they stepped into their waiting car. Jasmine smiled, a determined glint in her eye. Not yet. Let them figure it out when it's too late to do damage control. As their car pulled away from the airport, both sisters looked back at the Coastal Airlines terminal. The company had no idea what was coming. The Rivertech headquarters in San Francisco's Soma district was typically quiet on Sundays. But today the executive conference room buzzed with focused energy. Less than 8 hours after being ejected from their flight, Jasmine and Jessica Rivers had assembled their crisis response team. Franklin Moore, their corporate attorney since Rivertech's inception, spread documents across the polished conference table. At 56, the former civil rights attorney brought both legal expertise and a deep understanding of discrimination cases to the table. From a legal standpoint, we have multiple causes of action, Franklin explained, his deep voice commanding. Attention, discrimination under federal law, breach of contract, assault when they manhandled Jessica, property damage for the broken watch and luggage contents, and potentially emotional distress. Victoria Chen projected financial data onto the wall screen. Coastal Airlines is in a precarious position post-pandemic. They received federal bailout money, but are still struggling with reduced business travel. A scandal like this could devastate their stock price. Olivia Jackson completed the core team, her tablet filled with media contacts and social media analytics. We've identified key influencers in travel, business, and racial justice spaces. Strategic leaks to these individuals will ensure maximum visibility without appearing orchestrated by you. Jasmine nodded, reviewing the litigation documents Franklin had prepared. These look comprehensive. How quickly can we file? First thing tomorrow morning, Franklin confirmed. I've already drafted the shareholder action notice demanding an emergency board meeting. The twins had decided on a multi-pronged approach: legal action to create immediate pressure, shareholder action to force corporate accountability, and a carefully orchestrated media strategy to shape public perception. What about the video? Jessica asked, turning to Olivia. I've edited it to highlight the most egregious moments while protecting the identities of other passengers, Olivia explained, playing the modified clip on her tablet. We'll release it to these 3 influencers tonight, staggered by about an hour each. The edited video was powerful, capturing Bradley Thompson's implication that the twins didn't belong in first class, Meredith Cooper's condescending suggestion that they'd bought discounted tickets, and the physical mishandling of their property. Perfect, Jasmine approved, and our official response when reporters inevitably call: no comment pending litigation. Olivia recommended, your silence will be strategic, letting the video speak for itself while building anticipation for your eventual statement. By 9 p.m. that evening, the first influencer, a travel blogger with 3 million followers known for exposing airline misdeeds, posted the video with the caption, shocking, Black first-class passengers ejected to make way for white man. Coastal Airlines explained this. Hashtag Coastal Airlines, hashtag seat switch shame an hour later. A racial justice activist with a massive Twitter following shared it, adding, watch how quickly platinum status becomes worthless. When you're black, this is flying while black in America. Hashtag Coastal Airlines. Hashtag Flying Willow Black. By midnight, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. By dawn, it had reached 20 million views and was trending nationally. Morning news shows were leading with the story, showing carefully selected clips and speculating about the identity of the mystery passengers who had been so blatantly discriminated against. Coastal Airlines' initial response came at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. A terse statement claiming the incident was a regrettable miscommunication about seating assignments and that they were investigating internally. The statement only fueled public outrage, with commentators pointing out that no miscommunication could explain the clear bias captured on video. While the public firestorm grew, Franklin Moore was filing legal documents and formal complaints with the Department of Transportation, the FAA, and federal courts. Victoria Chen was contacting other major shareholders, particularly Wellington Capital, whose ESG-focused investment strategy made them natural allies in pushing for change. Meanwhile, Olivia had uncovered something significant. We found 7 previous complaints against Bradley Thompson in the last 2 years, she reported during their morning briefing, all filed by passengers of color, all dismissed by Coastal as misunderstandings. Jessica frowned. How did you get access to those? I have a contact in their customer service department who's been documenting these incidents and getting nowhere with management. Olivia explained. She's willing to go on record anonymously. And Meredith Cooper, Jasmine asked, for similar complaints. Plus an internal harassment complaint from a black flight attendant who claimed Cooper sabotaged her training. The pattern was clear. This wasn't an isolated incident, but evidence of systematic discrimination that company leadership had repeatedly ignored or buried. By mid-afternoon, the leak Franklin had anticipated came through an anonymous email containing internal Coastal Airlines communications about VIP customer treatment. Listen to this. He said, reading from his laptop, when allocating premium upgrades, prioritize passengers who reflect our aspirational brand image. That's from their customer service training manual. Aspirational brand image, Jessica repeated incredulously. That's corporate speak for white and wealthy. Exactly, Franklin nodded. And there's more. An email from Gregory Peterson, the CEO, responding to diversity concerns. Our premium customers expect a certain experience and atmosphere. We need to be mindful of that when making visible changes to our service approach. Victoria's phone rang. Her contact at Wellington Capital confirming they would support the Rivers twins. Call for an emergency board meeting. With Wellington's 22% stake aligned with the twins' 15%, they now had the voting power to force significant action. As evening approached, Coastal Airlines issued a second statement, this one noticeably more contrite. We acknowledge the seriousness of this incident and are taking immediate steps to address the concerns raised. The employees involved have been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Too little, too late, Jasmine commented as they watched the announcement on the news. They're still treating this as an isolated incident rather than addressing the systemic issues. That's because they don't know what's coming tomorrow. Jessica replied with grim satisfaction. The next morning, as planned, Franklin Moore filed the comprehensive discrimination lawsuit. Simultaneously, Victoria Chen submitted the formal shareholder action, demanding an emergency board meeting to address systemic discrimination and corporate governance failures. The twins had decided to remain strategically silent, letting these actions speak for them while speculation about their identity continued to fuel media interest in the story. By the end of the second day, #Coastal Airlines and #SeatSwitchShame were the top trending topics nationally. Celebrity allies were posting support for the unnamed black passengers. Competing airlines were publicly affirming their commitment to equality and non-discrimination, seeing an opportunity to distinguish themselves from Coastal's growing scandal. The twins watched it all unfold from their command center at Rivertech. Their vacation postponed, but not forgotten. They still don't know who we are, Jessica observed as they reviewed the latest news coverage. They will soon enough, Jasmine replied, reviewing the agenda for the emergency board meeting. Their shareholder action had successfully triggered, and when they do, they'll realize this is just the beginning. The Coastal Airlines corporate headquarters in Atlanta projected an image of stability and success with its gleaming glass tower and manicured grounds. But inside the executive suite on the 30th floor, chaos reigned. How did we not know? The Rivers twins were shareholders. Gregory Peterson, CEO of Coastal Airlines for the past 11 years, slammed his fist on the conference table. At 62, Peterson had navigated the company through the 2008 recession, a pilot strike in 2015, and the recent pandemic, but nothing had prepared him for the current crisis. They purchased through a holding company during the pandemic bailout, explained Charles Drummond, the CFO, Rivers Innovations LLC. We had no way to know it was them specifically. Amanda Lewis, the Human Resources Director, looked grim as she spread printouts across the table. This goes beyond the Rivers incident. We've uncovered 13 similar complaints in the past year alone, all involving Bradley Thompson or Meredith Cooper, all filed by passengers of color. Why wasn't I informed of this pattern? Peterson demanded. Amanda's expression hardened. I sent you 3 separate reports about Thompson specifically. You told me to handle it discreetly, to avoid unnecessary drama. The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by Marcus Winters, the chief legal officer. The discrimination lawsuit filed this morning is comprehensive and damning. They have video evidence, witness statements, and now these internal patterns. Standard damage control won't work here. Can we settle? Peterson asked, already calculating. Potential costs. It's not just a lawsuit, Drummond interjected. They've triggered an emergency board meeting as shareholders. They own 15% of the company, Greg. 15%. Peterson paled visibly. How is that possible? They bought when our stock hit rock bottom during the pandemic, and they've aligned with Wellington Capital. Together they control 37% of voting shares. The CEO slumped in his chair, finally grasping the full magnitude of the situation. What do they want? Based on the shareholder action, they're demanding a complete overhaul of diversity policies, termination of all employees involved in the incident, your resignation, and a restructuring of the board to include more diverse voices. Marcus summarized. My resignation, that's absurd. This was one incident with a few bad employees. It wasn't one incident. Amanda interrupted firmly. The evidence suggests a pattern that management, including you, repeatedly ignored. We're facing a systemic problem that goes all the way to the top. As the executive team argued about strategy, across town at the Four Seasons Hotel, Jasmine and Jessica Rivers were preparing for the confrontation to come. Are you ready for this? Jessica asked as they dressed in matching power suits, Jasmine in deep navy, Jessica in charcoal gray. I've been ready since the moment they questioned our right to sit in seats we paid for. Jasmine replied, fastening a pearl earring. Their plan was precise. Rather than announcing their identity immediately, they would first visit Coastal Airlines headquarters as potential investors, requesting a tour and company overview. Only when they reached the executive suite would they reveal who they really were. Victoria just texted, Jessica said, checking her phone. The board members have been notified of the emergency meeting tomorrow. Most are flying in tonight. Perfect timing. Jasmine nodded approvingly. At precisely 2 p.m., the twins arrived at Coastal Airlines headquarters, where they were greeted by Deborah Morris, the investor relations director who had no idea of their true identity. Ms. Chen mentioned you were interested in a significant investment, Deborah said warmly, leading them through the gleaming lobby. We're always excited to meet potential partners, especially successful entrepreneurs like yourselves. We believe in experiencing a company's culture firsthand before investing, Jasmine explained as they toured the facility. Completely understandable, Deborah agreed. Coastal Airlines prides itself on our company culture and customer service excellence. Jessica caught her sister's eye, both suppressing their reaction to this ironic statement. As they moved through various departments, they noted the stark lack of diversity, particularly in leadership positions. The few employees of color they observed were primarily in support roles or maintenance staff. We'd like to meet with executive leadership if possible, Jasmine requested as the tour neared its end. Given the size of investment we're considering, we'd want to connect with decision makers directly. Of course, Deborah replied eagerly. I believe Mr. Peterson and several executives are in a meeting, but they should be wrapping up soon. I'll see if they can spare a few minutes. When they reached the executive floor, the tension was palpable. Staff moved with hurried purpose, expressions tense. The news coverage of the discrimination incident played silently on a wall-mounted television, though no one seemed to be watching it directly. Deborah knocked on the conference room door and poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but I have potential investors here who would love a few moments of your time. Gregory Peterson emerged, his smile professional but strained. Always time. For potential partners, Gregory Peterson, CEO, Jessica and Jasmine Rivers. Jessica introduced as they entered the conference room. Co-founders of Rivertech Innovations. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Peterson froze mid-handshake, his face draining of color. Round the table, executives who recognized the names showed varying degrees of shock. You, Peterson, managed, his voice barely audible. Yes, us, Jasmine confirmed calmly. The 2 black women your staff deemed unworthy of sitting in first-class seats we purchased. Also, as you've recently discovered, the owners of 15% of Coastal Airlines. The silence in the room was deafening. Amanda Lewis was the first to recover. Standing to address them directly, Ms. Rivers and Ms. Rivers, I'm Amanda Lewis, HR Director. On behalf of Coastal Airlines, I want to express our deepest, save. The prepared apology, Jessica interrupted. We're not here for performative regret. We're here because your company has a systemic discrimination problem. That starts with frontline staff like Thompson and Cooper, but clearly extends into management and corporate culture. Jasmine placed a folder on the conference table. This is a comprehensive analysis of diversity metrics across Coastal Airlines. Compared to industry standards and best practices, you're underperforming in every category. The incident we experienced wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom of institutional issues. Peterson finally found his voice. These accusations are extreme. One unfortunate incident, 13 similar complaints in the past year. Jasmine cut in. All documented, all dismissed or buried. That's not an incident, that's a pattern. We have the board meeting tomorrow, Peterson said, attempting to regain control. Perhaps we could discuss your concerns in that more formal setting. This isn't a negotiation, Jessica stated firmly. Tomorrow's board meeting will address leadership changes, policy overhauls, and a comprehensive diversity and inclusion initiative with real accountability measures. You're demanding my resignation based on the actions of 2 employees? Peterson asked incredulously. We're demanding accountability for a culture you've fostered over 11 years as CEO. Jasmine corrected. Thompson and Cooper felt comfortable discriminating against us because the company culture made that behavior acceptable. The executives exchanged uncomfortable glances, none willing to directly challenge the twins, both because of their shareholder power and because the evidence they presented was irrefutable. I've dedicated my life to this airline, Peterson said, his tone shifting to one of wounded pride. To suggest I've fostered discrimination is accurate, Amanda Lewis interrupted. Surprising everyone, I've been bringing these issues to your attention for years, Greg. You consistently prioritized what you called customer expectations over addressing clear patterns of bias. The betrayal from his own HR director left Peterson speechless. Around the table, the balance of power visibly shifted as executives realized which way the wind was blowing. The choice is simple, Jasmine concluded. Either cooperate with the changes we're proposing, or face a public battle you cannot win, not in the courts, not in the boardroom, and certainly not in the court of public opinion. As they prepared to leave, Jessica turned back to the stunned executives. We'll see you all tomorrow at the board meeting. I suggest you come prepared to discuss transition rather than resistance. When the conference room door closed behind them, Jessica released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That felt powerful, Jasmine finished. But this is just the beginning. Would you have confronted the executives directly like Jasmine and Jessica did, or taken a different approach? Comment number 1 if you think their direct confrontation was necessary, or number 2 if you believe a more behind-the-scenes approach would have been more effective. Like this video if you believe corporate leadership should be held accountable for company culture. Do you think Peterson genuinely didn't know about the discrimination pattern, or was he deliberately ignoring it? Subscribe to see how this corporate showdown ends now. How do you think the public will react when they discover who these mysterious first-class passengers really are? Let's find out. The Westbrook Hotel's Grand Ballroom in downtown Atlanta buzzed with anticipation. Journalists from major networks and publications checked their equipment, murmuring speculations about the press conference called by the victims of the Coastal Airlines discrimination incident. Until now, the women in the viral video had remained anonymous, allowing the footage to speak for itself. Behind the stage, Jasmine and Jessica Rivers reviewed their remarks one final time. With Olivia Jackson, remember, this isn't just about your experience, Olivia advised. It's about connecting your incident to the broader pattern and pushing for industry-wide change. The twins nodded in unison. Yesterday's confrontation with Coastal's executive team had been private. Today's revelation would be public and explosive. At precisely 10 a.m., they stepped onto the stage together, causing an immediate stir of recognition among the assembled press. Though the sisters had achieved significant success in the tech world, they had maintained relatively low public profiles. Until now. Good morning, Jasmine began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm Jasmine Rivers, and this is my sister Jessica. We are the women from the video that many of you have seen, showing discrimination aboard Coastal Airlines Flight 1380 to Bermuda 2 days ago." Camera shutters clicked rapidly as Jessica continued. "We're here today not just to share our experience, but to address a systemic problem that extends far beyond one flight or one airline." For the next 10 minutes, the twins took turns describing their ordeal, from the subtle shifts in treatment at check-in to the explicit discrimination and physical mistreatment during their removal from the aircraft. Their account was measured, but powerful, devoid of the emotional language that critics might use to dismiss them. "What happened to us was not an isolated incident," Jasmine emphasized. "It was the result of a corporate culture that normalizes discrimination and emboldens employees to act on biases without fear of consequences." Then came the moment they had strategically delayed, the revelation that transformed the story from yet another viral incident to something far more significant. What Bradley Thompson, Meredith Cooper, and Coastal Airlines leadership did not know when they decided we didn't belong in first class, Jessica stated, pausing for effect, was that we are not just customers, we are the third largest shareholders of Coastal Airlines, owning 15% of the company. The room erupted in shocked exclamations and furious typing as reporters rushed to update their stories. "Through our investment firm, Rivers Innovations LLC, we purchased a significant stake in Coastal Airlines during the pandemic," Jasmine explained. "We did so believing that bringing diverse perspectives to traditionally homogeneous industries could drive positive change. Yesterday, we learned just how necessary that change is." The press conference continued with the twins outlining the evidence they had uncovered. The 13 similar complaints, the internal communications revealing bias, and the leadership's pattern of ignoring or dismissing concerns about discrimination. This morning, the Coastal Airlines Board of Directors is meeting to address these issues. Jessica informed the crowd, "We are calling for comprehensive changes, including leadership accountability, anti-discrimination training, and measurable diversity goals throughout the organization." As the twins opened the floor for questions, the hotel ballroom doors burst open. Darnell Williams, the security officer who had slipped them his contact information at the airport, strode in with purpose. "I apologize for interrupting," he said, approaching the microphone. "My name is Darnell Williams. I was the security officer who witnessed how these women were treated. I've been suspended for providing them my contact information, but I couldn't stay silent watching this press conference from home." Jasmine invited him to join them on stage, an unplanned but powerful addition to their presentation. "What I witnessed was wrong," Darnell stated simply. "Ms. Rivers and Ms. Rivers were treated differently because of who they are, not what they did. I've seen it happen before with Mr. Thompson and Ms. Cooper, but complaints never go anywhere. I couldn't be part of it anymore." By noon, Coastal Airlines stock had plummeted 18%. #boycott Coastal was trending nationally, with travelers posting screenshots of canceled reservations and cut-up loyalty cards. Celebrities and public figures were weighing in, most condemning the airline and expressing support for the Rivers twins. But the most damaging blow came when an investigative journalist from The Atlantic published a deep-dive article just hours after the press conference. The piece revealed that Richard Whitfield, the man who had demanded the twins' seats, was actually a vice president at competing airline Aerostar International, apparently conducting competitive intelligence on Coastal's premium service. This suggests Coastal Airlines prioritized a competitor over its own investors, the article stated, raising serious questions about judgment at the highest levels of the company. As the public reckoning intensified, a cascade of revelations followed. Former Coastal employees began speaking out, sharing their own experiences of discrimination within the company. Bradley Thompson's history of similar incidents was exposed by a former flight attendant who had documented his behavior for years but had been silenced by management. Meredith Cooper attempted damage control with a tearful interview on a morning news program, claiming she had been following protocol and never intended any discrimination. The appearance backfired spectacularly when the host confronted her with previous complaints from passengers of color, leaving Cooper stammering through unconvincing denials. By mid-afternoon, several major corporate clients announced they were suspending their travel contracts with Coastal pending resolution of the discrimination issues. The company's largest institutional investors issued statements expressing concern and supporting the governance changes proposed by the Rivers twins. Meanwhile, competing airlines seized the opportunity, announcing enhanced diversity initiatives and anti-discrimination training programs. Delta's CEO released a statement explicitly condemning discrimination in air travel and inviting the Rivers twins to consult on their inclusion policies. Inside Coastal's emergency board meeting, Gregory Peterson fought desperately to save his position, but the combination of shareholder pressure, public outrage, and damning evidence made his position untenable. By 4 p.m., Bloomberg reported that Peterson had resigned, effective immediately, along with 2 long-serving board members who had consistently opposed diversity initiatives. As evening fell, Jessica and Jasmine returned to their hotel suite, exhausted but satisfied with the day's developments. Their phones buzzed constantly with messages of support, media requests, and updates from Victoria about the board meeting's outcomes. "I never imagined our vacation would turn into this," Jessica said, slipping off her heels and collapsing onto the sofa. Jasmine joined her, their shoulders touching as they had since childhood, a gesture of solidarity that had carried them through countless challenges. "Maybe this was the more important journey. Do you think anything will really change?" Jessica wondered. "Beyond Coastal, I mean, it has to," Jasmine replied. "Because next time, it might be someone without our resources or platform to fight back." They sat in contemplative silence, watching through the window as twilight settled over Atlanta, the city where, decades earlier, civil rights leaders had fought for the very dignity and equality they continued to defend today. 3 weeks after the incident that sparked a national conversation about discrimination in the airline industry, Jasmine and Jessica Rivers stood in the back of Coastal Airlines' largest training facility, observing the company-wide town hall without announcing their presence. The changes implemented since their confrontation with leadership were already visible. From the diverse panel of speakers on stage to the open format encouraging employee participation, the emergency shareholder vote had been decisive, with the Rivers twins' 15% stake combined with Wellington Capital's 22%, and several smaller investors who aligned with their position. They easily secured the 2/3 majority needed for sweeping governance changes. Gregory Peterson's resignation as CEO had been just the beginning. The board had been restructured to include 4 new directors with backgrounds in diversity and inclusion, corporate ethics, and customer experience. 2 of Peterson's most loyal lieutenants had been removed from leadership positions, replaced by executives with proven track records in building inclusive corporate cultures. Most significantly, Tanya Rodriguez had been appointed as interim CEO, a respected aviation executive who had previously served as chief operating officer at a smaller regional airline known for its progressive policies. Rodriguez, a Latina woman with 20 years of industry experience, had immediately signaled her commitment to transformation. "We cannot change our past," Rodriguez was saying now from the stage, addressing the assembled employees. "But starting today, we are fundamentally changing our future." The incident with Ms. Rivers and Ms. Rivers exposed problems that had been festering within our company for years. Rather than denying these issues, we must confront them honestly. The atmosphere in the room was a mix of apprehension and hope. Some employees, particularly those who had benefited from the old system, appeared uncomfortable with the frank discussions of bias and privilege. Others, especially employees of color who had silently endured marginalization for years, seemed cautiously optimistic about the promised changes. "The entire team involved in the incident has been terminated," Rodriguez continued, addressing a question from the audience. "Bradley Thompson, Meredith Cooper, and the gate agents who participated in the discrimination have been removed from the company." Additionally, 3 managers who had previously dismissed complaints about these individuals have been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. Jasmine leaned toward her sister. "They're actually doing it," she whispered. "Real consequences." Jessica nodded, though her expression remained cautious. They had seen too many companies make grand pronouncements about change only to return to business as usual once public attention faded. The criminal charges against Bradley Thompson had been another unexpected development. After reviewing the evidence, including Jasmine's recording and the airport security footage, the district attorney had filed assault charges related to the physical handling of Jessica during the ejection. Thompson's attorney was reportedly negotiating a plea deal, but the mere fact of criminal accountability sent a powerful message throughout the industry. The Department of Transportation had also launched a civil rights investigation into Coastal Airlines practices, examining everything from hiring patterns to customer complaint resolution procedures. The investigation had expanded to include several other major carriers, after similar accounts emerged from passengers inspired by the twins' public stand. Following the town hall, Rodriguez spotted the twins at the back of the room and approached them directly. Ms. Rivers, I'm glad you could attend," she greeted them warmly. "Your presence reminds everyone that this isn't an abstract exercise. Real people were hurt by our company's failures. We appreciate the changes we're seeing." Jasmine replied diplomatically, "But sustained transformation requires more than a few weeks of attention." Rodriguez nodded seriously. "Which is why I wanted to discuss your proposal for the Rivers Protocol with you in person. Incorporating anti-discrimination checkpoints into every aspect of our customer service processes could set a new standard for the industry." The Rivers Protocol had been one of the twins' core demands, a comprehensive framework for identifying and preventing discriminatory treatment at every customer touchpoint, from booking to baggage claim. Unlike typical corporate diversity initiatives that focused primarily on abstract training, the protocol established specific procedures, accountability measures, and regular testing to ensure equal treatment. "We'd also like to increase our ownership stake," Jessica informed Rodriguez. "We believe in investing in companies during transformation, not just criticizing from the outside." Rodriguez appeared genuinely surprised. "After everything that happened, you want to invest more in Coastal? We see potential," Jasmine explained. "Companies that embrace meaningful diversity and inclusion typically outperform their peers financially. This isn't just about social justice, it's about building a more resilient and innovative business." Later that afternoon, the twins attended a smaller gathering where Darnell Williams, the security officer who had supported them, was being honored for his integrity. After being initially suspended for providing his contact information to the twins, Darnell had been reinstated with a promotion to a newly created position, Ethics and Inclusion Officer for Airport Security Operations. "I just did what was right," Darnell said modestly when presented with a commendation. "But I know many others witnessed similar incidents and stayed silent because they feared for their jobs. That's the culture we need to change. We're standing against discrimination is rewarded, not punished." The implementation of the Rivers Protocol began in earnest the following week. Every employee, from executives to baggage handlers, underwent comprehensive training on recognizing and addressing bias. Anonymous testing procedures were established, with actors of different backgrounds posing as customers to identify differential treatment. A streamlined complaint system was created, with direct reporting to the newly established Office of Inclusion and Customer Equity. Most controversially, the company adopted a policy of transparency with discrimination complaints, publishing quarterly aggregate data on incidents, resolutions, and ongoing challenges. While some executives worried this would expose the company to criticism, Rodriguez insisted that accountability to the public was essential for rebuilding trust. "Sunshine is the best disinfectant," she stated in a company-wide email announcing the policy. "We cannot improve what we refuse to measure and acknowledge." 6 weeks after the incident, Coastal Airlines held a private meeting for passengers who had been on Flight 1382, those who had witnessed the discrimination against the Rivers twins. Some had recorded the incident, others had provided statements. Afterward, a few had remained silent, later expressing regret for not speaking up. Your presence today helps us learn and grow, Rodriguez told the assembled passengers. Whether you spoke out or not, you experienced something that should never happen in our company or any other. We want to hear your perspectives on how we can do better. One elderly white woman approached the twins afterward, tears in her eyes. I sat 3 rows behind you and did nothing, she admitted. I was raised to mind my business, to not make a scene. But watching you stand your ground taught me that silence in the face of injustice is its own kind of wrong. As the transformation continued, the Rivers twins maintained their involvement while resuming their primary focus on RiverTech. The experience had opened new possibilities for their company, as well, developing technology solutions for detecting and addressing bias in customer service interactions. What had begun as a traumatic vacation disruption was evolving into a new business vertical with significant potential impact. Sometimes the most important journeys take you somewhere you never planned to go, Jasmine reflected during a quiet moment with her sister. Jessica nodded, understanding as only a twin could. And sometimes being denied your seat leads to a better place to stand. 6 months after the incident that transformed Coastal Airlines from within, Atlanta's premier convention center glowed with elegant lighting and sophisticated decor. The company's high-profile rebranding event marked not just a name change, but a fundamental shift in corporate identity. Coastal Airlines was now Horizon Air, a name chosen to symbolize new perspectives and expanded possibilities. Jasmine and Jessica Rivers, dressed in coordinated evening wear, Jasmine in midnight blue, Jessica in deep emerald, moved through the crowd with the confidence of women who had helped reshape an industry. As co-chairs of the board's newly created diversity committee, they had been instrumental in developing policies now being adopted by competitors. Across the aviation sector, there they are, Jessica murmured, nodding toward a group of familiar faces near the refreshment tables. The passengers from row 4 who recorded everything, the small group of travelers who had documented the twins' discrimination, had become unexpected allies in the transformation process, providing testimonials for training materials and consulting on customer experience improvements. Their videos, combined with Jasmine's recording, had created irrefutable evidence that prevented the incident from being dismissed as a misunderstanding. Ms. Rivers, both of you, called Tanya Rodriguez, now the permanent CEO after her successful interim period. The board members from Wellington Capital are eager to discuss the expansion of the Rivers Protocol to their other transportation investments. The Rivers Protocol had evolved beyond Horizon Air, becoming a benchmark for anti-discrimination practices across the service industry. Several major hotel chains, rental car companies, and cruise lines had adopted versions of the framework, recognizing both its ethical importance and business value. Customer satisfaction scores consistently improved when diverse clientele felt genuinely welcomed and respected. We just received confirmation that the industry association will be incorporating key elements into their certification standards. Rodriguez informed them proudly, "You've changed not just one airline, but potentially the entire travel experience." The ballroom's lighting dimmed as the formal program began. A video montage showed the company's transformation journey, uncomfortable but necessary moments from town halls and training sessions, the development of new policies, and testimonials from employees who had witnessed positive changes in corporate culture. 6 months ago, we faced a pivotal moment, Rodriguez stated from the podium. We could have chosen the path many companies take: minimize, settle quietly, make token changes, and wait for public attention to move elsewhere. Instead, guided by the courage and vision of Jasmine and Jessica Rivers, we chose transformation. The twins had initially resisted being centered in the company's narrative, concerned it might reduce systemic issues to a single incident, but they had ultimately recognized the power of their story to catalyze real change, agreeing to limited involvement in the rebranding campaign. Tonight, we honor someone whose integrity made this transformation possible, Rodriguez continued. When others looked away, he extended a hand of support at significant personal risk. Darnell Williams, now Director of Ethics and Inclusion for Horizon Air, took the stage to thunderous applause. His simple act of providing his contact information to the twins had evolved into a symbol of allyship within the company. "I didn't do anything special," Darnell insisted modestly. "I just couldn't be part of something I knew was wrong. If we all made that choice every day, transformation wouldn't be necessary. It would be our natural state." Following the formal program, the twins found themselves surrounded by former passengers from Flight 1382, many of whom they had come to know during the legal proceedings and transformation process. "My daughter asked me why those ladies were being treated differently," shared a mother who had been seated in economy with her 8-year-old child. "I didn't have a good answer then. Now I can tell her that when people stand up against injustice, real change is possible." As the evening progressed, Jessica checked her watch. "We should start getting ready. The flight to Bermuda leaves at 9 tomorrow morning." Their postponed vacation was finally happening, this time on their own airline. With very different circumstances, the twins had maintained their increased investment in the company, now owning 20% and working closely with Wellington Capital to ensure the transformation remained on track. "Ms. Rivers, both of you, actually." The twins turned to find a familiar face, Richard Whitfield, the man who had demanded their seats 6 months earlier. They had learned during the investigation that Whitfield wasn't actually a corporate spy as they had initially suspected. The truth was more complex. "I owe you both an apology," Whitfield said, his demeanor markedly different from their first encounter. "What I did was inexcusable." "Yes, it was," Jasmine agreed, neither hostile nor particularly forgiving. "I've spent these months reflecting on my behavior, the entitlement, the assumptions." Whitfield looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I want you to know I've been working with Dr. Reynolds in your corporate bias training program. I'm trying to understand privileges I never acknowledged before." The twins exchanged glances, silently communicating as they had since childhood. "Recognition is the first step," Jessica offered. "What matters is how you move forward." Whitfield nodded solemnly. "That's why I accepted the position with the Industry Ethics Committee. My experience, from the wrong side of the situation, can perhaps help identify how these patterns perpetuate." This revelation surprised them both. The industry committee had been formed in response to the Department of Transportation's expanded investigation, tasked with developing standardized practices to prevent discrimination across all airlines. "Transformation isn't just about policies," Jasmine observed. "It's about people changing how they see the world and their place in it." As Whitfield moved on, Jessica turned to her sister. "Did you ever imagine our bumped flight would lead to all this?" "Not specifically," Jasmine admitted, "but I always believed our success would mean more than just financial achievement. Mom raised us to walk through doors and then hold them open for others." 1 year to the day after the incident, the Rivers twins stood on the stage of their alma mater, Detroit Central College, addressing the graduating class of computer science students, a cohort notably more diverse than their own had been a decade earlier. "Your technical skills matter," Jessica told the graduates, "but equally important is how you use your voice when you witness injustice. We built a successful company because we mastered complex technology," Jasmine continued, "but we created lasting change because we refused to accept discrimination as the cost of doing business in America." The sisters had established a scholarship fund for underrepresented students in STEM fields, committed to expanding the pipeline of diverse talent entering technology and business. Several of the first scholarship recipients sat in the front row, inspired by two women who had transformed their own humiliating experience into a catalyst for industry-wide change. "The most powerful code you'll ever write," Jasmine concluded, "is the code of conduct you establish in the organizations you build and lead." As they left the stage to thunderous applause, Jessica squeezed her sister's hand. From first class seats to the boardroom, from viral video to industry transformation, their journey had been unexpected but ultimately purposeful. "They didn't know we owned the airline," Jessica whispered, echoing the line that had catapulted their story into the public consciousness. "And now everyone knows what we stand for," Jasmine replied. This story reminds us that discrimination often persists because those with power allow it to continue unchallenged. Jasmine and Jessica's experience shows that true change requires both courage and strategy. By documenting the discrimination, leveraging their position as shareholders, and refusing to accept superficial apologies, they transformed an entire corporate culture. The most powerful lesson is that standing up against injustice isn't just about personal vindication, it's about creating systemic change that protects others who might not have the same resources or platform. The twins could have simply taken their business elsewhere and enjoyed their wealth in spaces that welcomed them. Instead, they chose the harder path of transformation. Their story also demonstrates that discrimination in premium spaces, often, reveals the most deeply entrenched biases. The assumption that Black women couldn't legitimately belong in first-class exposed beliefs that corporate diversity statement could hide. Only by confronting these beliefs directly with evidence, accountability, and persistent pressure could meaningful change occur. What would you have done if you were in the twins' position? Would you have used your power to transform the company or simply taken your business elsewhere? Comment below with your thoughts. If this story inspired you to stand up against discrimination wherever you encounter it, hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that speaking up against injustice can create real change. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the journey you never planned becomes your most important destination.